Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cryptid Chronicles. This is your host, Ryan Edwards, and I want to welcome all you guys tonight. And we have a very special guest tonight, Bear County Bigfoot. He is a Sasquatch researcher from here and actually my hometown of San Antonio, Texas. He's been doing research here for the past couple of years, and he has some particular evidence and findings that I want to discuss tonight with you guys. But before we do any of that, I want to say thank you all for being here tonight. People that are watching here live, the ones that will come later and watch at a later time, I want to thank all of you. If you guys can, please like this video if you do enjoy our content. Share this out to your friends. Anyone who's interested in cryptozoology and unknown creatures, please share this out. And if you have any type of encounters or evidence or anything like that you want to share with me, please give it. Please share it with us. I'm always welcome to having people on, so please just let me know. But real quick, let me bring on Bear County Bigfoot and let's start the show.
Going to. How's
Hey,
it going?
it's going good. How you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Doing great. So I'm sorry to move the camera a little bit. I'm Rod with Bear County Bigfoot. Established in 2018 is when I started full on, just researching and as an enthusiast and documenting alleged Sasquatch activity. So I've been doing it for a little bit, not as long as a lot of the well-seasoned guys have been doing it, but I feel like I've gotten a pretty decent grasp of my area and a lot of the research that I've been documenting. So it's great to be on here. It's great to thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Like with me, I always like talking to researchers, especially ones that are here from pretty close by, because it's one thing with talking to researchers in the same area. You can correlate, like, okay, you know this spot. Oh, I know this spot. Oh, you know this park. I know
Yeah,
this park. And
yeah.
with you being here in Bear County, I especially want to talk to you and talk to you about your research.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of my research revolves around creek greenbelts, and to me, it made more sense as if I was an apex predator to utilize those creek greenbelts as like a highway because they go in and out of the city. And I'm speaking in terms of San Antonio and the Bear County area. You know, two prominent creek greenbelts that I'm speaking about actually go in and out of the city, and a lot of the documentation that I have, and what I feel is going on is that these creatures are utilizing these creek greenbelts as their highway, and they're following the food source. We've got an abundance of whitetail here. You know that already,
Yeah,
living in the area, and they're basically uh, the apex predator here because we don't have bears to deal with. We really don't have cats. We maybe there's once or twice we've documented one around here, years and years ago, but they're not prevalent around the area. So, for me, utilizing the creek greenbelts, the concealment, the wood structures, things of that nature make more sense to me, and to me it makes more sense for a recipe for alleged Sasquatch activity than anything else, honestly, because I feel like these creatures not only have we found activity or trace evidence in thicker parts and remote parts of the woods and things like that, but I feel like these creatures are also opportunistic. So going in and out of these creek greenbelts in and around suburban areas don't surprise me at all. I don't really believe that you have to go out into these crazy remote areas to really find any trace evidence or signs of alleged activity. I believe you can find it right in your own backyard if you are someone that knows about a creek that runs in and out of your city. If it makes sense, like if there's enough thickness and vegetation to conceal yourself, and there's whitetail and there's a water source around, that makes all the sense in the world to me for a recipe for alleged activity with these creatures. So that's where I'm at with my research and what I've been doing for the past few years.
Yeah, and that's and one thing when people think of like, especially like San Antonio, Texas, they think of a large city. And of course, Sasquatch sightings and phenomena, they wouldn't correlate to it. But people don't realize there is a history of Bigfoot sightings here in town. We've had
Yeah,
several back in, I know the famous account of two homeless people when they saw a big large-headed creature pick up a deer and walk away into the woods.
yep,
And that shows if there were sightings in the past, why would there be sightings now? And people don't realize as well there are a lot of wilderness areas here in San Antonio. And like
right,
those
right.
places that you get to, and it's almost like you're in the middle of the country, but you're still in the middle of town.
Yeah. No, and that it see, so there you go, right there. And that particular sighting and that encounter was in an area now, and now that area is kind of built up. You know, they've turned into commercial land and things like that. There's still remnants of that area around the 151, 1604, that spot there. But it's been developed and things like that. But that, that makes sense to me, because that area, there's also another creek that runs in and around that particular spot. And to me, I feel like there's a correlation with the creek greenbelts and activity, Sasquatch activity. Now, I don't think there's a whole lot of them that run through here. I don't think there's like a huge population. I think there's definitely a few, maybe a family unit, maybe two or three family units. I don't know how many that would consist of, but I do know that everything that I've found, it runs all up and down these creeks, and it makes sense because, again, if I've got a water source and I've got a habitat that supports big game, and I've got a way in and a way out, that makes all the sense to me, right? If I'm an
Yeah.
apex predator, I'm going to utilize, like a creek greenbelt for concealment, and I'm going to follow the food source. And the whitetail are a perfect food source, really are.
Yes, like there's always a quote that everyone brings up, especially here in Texas. The Legend of Boggy Creek. They always follow the creeks.
Right.
These animals always follow rivers. There's a correlation between creeks and rivers and Bigfoot sightings.
Absolutely.
So, with Salado Creek especially, it's a large source of water. It goes from in the middle of San Antonio all the way down to the south side of San Antonio,
Yeah.
which is very rural. And with any wild animal, you have factors like a push or pull factor. And with the Sasquatch, you'd have to think, why are they going to town? And then you think of food sources. You have the whitetail. Then you even have possible scavenging off of human refuse and things like that. So there
Absolutely.
was a great pull factor for a large predator or a large, at least omnivore, to be pulled into town.
Yeah.
So with it, if you have the evidence that correlates with that, it shows that there's an indicator for a possible Sasquatch being in town.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you touched on something that makes sense, right? You know, uh, taking food remnants from us, human food, things like that. I've heard encounters and stories of these creatures dumpster diving, going, and so that tells me that they're opportunistic. I don't believe that they always hunt. I think if they can get a free meal and it's easy, they're going to take it. And what better area than a suburban area that has a creek or a green belt running through it to have that opportunity to get some human food, or what I mean by human food, but like pizza, whatever we throw away. I believe that that's what they're going to be more drawn to, an easy meal. And then you've got the hunting element as well. I mean, the whitetail are a great source food for anybody really. I mean, humans, and I think Sasquatch as well. So it all makes sense to me. But going up to the Salado Creek, if you look at it, it goes in and out of the city. And you touched on something where, hey man, this creek goes all the way down the south side. And while I don't know if they actually travel that far, I do know that there is an area where it goes past Loop 1604, which is a highway that loops all the way around San Antonio on the outskirts. And once you get out in that area, there's an Edwards Aquifer recharge zone. We have an aquifer, I guess, for the people that aren't from our area. The Edwards Aquifer is where we get our water. It's an underground cavern. It's a very vast, deep, huge cavern that stretches from San Antonio all the way to Austin. And I think maybe it may go a little bit further as well, or maybe more west. I'm not sure. But we're really not understanding. I don't think we really know how deep and vast this aquifer, this underground cavern is. I think the cave systems are key for these creatures. And I really believe that, going in and out of the Salado Creek outside of the city, they may be using these cave systems to conceal themselves, hide, and things like that. So that makes all the sense in the world to me, as far as them, going in and out of the city, having concealment, having a place to hide, things like that. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because like what if you think of San Antonio in of itself, it has a lot of country areas. Like I remember one time, if you might know this area, might not, on 410 in Callahan, that area. I
Yeah,
was driving one day and I saw in the middle of the highway a 10-point buck. They got hit by a car,
yeah,
and you're thinking to yourself, okay, how is that possible? But then you realize how there's large animals here in town,
yeah.
and you would think, okay, if there's these, then what else is here? And
Right.
like we talked about, like with the Edwards Aquifer, there is a correlation between like water and Sasquatch, and they could be using that even itself as a water source because there's several springs on in that area where water naturally bubbles up to the surface.
Yes, absolutely. And I just put out a video on my channel, on my YouTube channel, uh, that was documenting that recharge zone area, and you could see the water flowing, you know, um, some of it up out of the ground, and I even showed a couple of caves, I think, that were in this cliff that could, if you wanted to, you could go right in there. I mean, a full grown adult human can get right in there and be comfortable. So to me, I just felt like that made sense as far as these creatures utilizing that cavern, up in and out of that Salado Creek. And then when you go a little bit further, it opens up into a huge, vast area, a thick wooded area where if I wanted to go and disappear, you would never be able to find me because I can get right in there and I'm gone. You wouldn't even see me. You wouldn't know where I was at. So again, that makes all the sense in the world to me. Again, having that mindset of an apex predator, concealment, uh, the water source, the habitat that supports big game, that all just is a recipe for activity. And if you look at anybody else, in other states, in other areas, it's kind of almost the same thing. There's an area that supports big game, a habitat. There's a water source close by. There's passage in and out, things like that. So again, utilizing what other people, other researchers have documented, it makes sense. The only difference is what I look at is basically, around the suburban area, and I think some of us really tend to think that it could never happen in and around a suburban area. Alleged activity or signs of activity, documentation of activity. wood structures, footprints, things like that. People think that, well, I'm not going to say all of us think that. Some of us, I think, tend to believe that it could never happen in a suburban area or around a suburban area. And I think that's not accurate at all. I think it happens quite often, and I think it happens way more than we know. You know?
Yeah, like the idea that Sasquatch only live in the deepest, darkest mountains and forests, I think it's a phallic thinking.
Yeah.
Is that let's look at, like with cryptozoology, I like to look at known animals. Let's look at one that's very similar to Sasquatch, bears. There's plenty of times where bears going into large towns following food sources.
Yes.
If that happens with bears, why not Sasquatch? Because many
Right.
people use like grizzly bears and black bears as indicator species for Sasquatch.
Right.
So if they do it, why not a large, intelligent primate?
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, touching on the fact that they're intelligent. They obviously know how to hunt. They obviously know where to how to get in and out of areas. And don't get me wrong, I don't walk up to a patch of woods and just go, "There's Sasquatch activity here." Like it
Yeah,
has to have, it has to make sense. There has to be a rhyme and reason. I can't just roll up into a wooded area that has no in and out or any of those things and assume that there's going to be Sasquatch activity because it doesn't work that way. And at least from what I've seen, it doesn't work that way. So there has to be an in and out. There has to be an area where you can conceal yourself. And I would also say that there has to be an area where you could take the higher ground. I think from hearing from encounters and sightings, these things will take the higher ground, which tells me they're highly intelligent. They know how to hunt. They know exactly what they're doing. And I also believe that they're opportunistic. Again, I don't think they're above dumpster diving at all. In fact, I think that's a lot of their food that they can grab. It's as an easy meal. It's dumpster diving or taking advantage of somebody's discarded food or what have you. So again, that's I just always want to drive that point home to people that are interested in the subject and say, look, if you really want to try to find some activity or trace evidence, you really don't have to look too far. You really don't have to go out in these huge remote places. And not that there's nothing wrong with that, but you can find activity using some of the stuff I'm talking about. Utilizing a creek greenbelt. Water source has got to be close by. I would say you would have to have a water source that's at least 4 or 5 miles in proximity to that area, and then a habitat that supports big game. And there it is. To me, that's a recipe for activity. Period.
yes, and actually, one thing I did want to get have touched on here is we're talking about like evidence of Sasquatch in San Antonio. What are some like the evidence and trace evidence you're finding for these creatures being here in town?
Yeah. So one of the things, let me grab this real quick. One of the things, more notably, that I was able to grab was a casting of a print that I did about a month ago,
Hmm.
and this is the casting that I did, and it was kind of after a rain, where the ground was a little bit softer. So I like to use this as an example, and I like to use also this print as an example as well. Now this right here, now the reason why I'm showing both of these is because you can plainly see that the texture is a little different between the two. Okay, this is actually a replica from one of Paul Freeman's uh,
Yeah.
uh, prints. Michael Freeman, his son, sent this to me. He was very nice, very gracious, and he sent this to me. And now this is out of Washington State, right? We all know the whole Paul Freeman
Yeah.
documentation, right? This is obviously out of, like I said, San Antonio. Now the difference is our ground is very hard. We've got very hard ground, and underneath our soil, we've got caliche rock, which is like that bedrock, limestone, things like that. It's very hard. So people have asked me, well, if you found prints, why can't you cast them? Well, a lot of them are just outlines of prints. They're not really that deep. Either the creature isn't really that heavy, or our ground is super hard. And I think it's a little bit of both. So when it rains and the ground is a little bit softer, I'm able to go to the sites that I feel that are sites of habituation and look around, snoop around a little bit, and try to find some prints after a good rain, because the ground is soft. And that's exactly what I did with this particular one. And lo and behold, I found a print. There was 2 or 3 of these, but this was the more prominent and the deepest one that I could cast. And then next to this one were 2 or 3 other prints that were smaller. They look like a little baby size, maybe a toddler type of size print. And I wasn't able to cast those because they were just kind of outlines. They weren't thick at all, or they weren't deep. But this one was one that I casted. And actually, you could kind of see, I don't know if you could see this, but there's the pinky toe right there. I don't know
Yeah.
if you can see that right there. You could see some of the toes right here as well.
I can see toe structure, and I can almost see what almost looks like the presence of a metatarsal break.
Yes, exactly. Yep, you can see that too as well,
Yes.
right?
And
So this is some of the trace evidence that I found. The first casting I did didn't turn out so well, unfortunately. It was bad, and I was, still trying to understand, the ratio mixture on plaster of Paris. So
yeah,
unfortunately, I did a terrible job of the first one, but this one, I got a better grasp of it, and I was able to cast. And this is just some of the stuff that I found, and to my knowledge, I don't think, and I could be wrong, I don't think I've seen or heard of anybody in and around our county or a city that's done this. That's found a print like this and was able to cast it.
yeah, not in the area at least. I can't think of anyone at least in Bear County that does a lot of
Yeah,
field work.
right. So when I found this, it was just it was mind blowing. It really it freaked me out a little bit, because I was like, man, I can't believe I'm looking at this, because you look at videos of other people that are finding prints, that are casting them, and you're like, oh man, that's really cool, and you're super stoked about it. And then you actually find one, and it just freaks you out, because you can't believe that this is actually happening. This activity is happening in your city, around your city. Like, it's amazing to me. So, for me, having this print was a huge thing for me, and it really made all the documentation that I've done all worthwhile, because I knew there was stuff going on in and around my city. And can I definitively prove it? No, I can't. But we've got trace evidence that can point towards the subject itself, and that makes a lot of sense to me, as far as the creek and the Edwards Underground Aquifer, the whitetail. All of those things make sense. And I think the reason why I found this and I was able to cast it was because of the recipe that we were just talking about. Supporting a habitat that supports big game, creek that goes in and out of the city, makes sense. And here's some of the fruit of the labor of what I've been putting in, hours and days and nights and mornings and afternoons of just trying to document a lot of this stuff. And this is it right here. Now, most of my documentation you'll find on my channel or on Facebook or on Instagram has a lot to do with wood structures, and I like to call myself more of that wood structure type of researcher than anything else, because it's the only trace evidence that I really have to hold on to and to document. And that's what I really mainly document. And some people, have come at me with like, well, that's Boy Scouts, or that's people, or Native Americans did that. And some of this stuff, I'm not going to say that people don't do this or don't make little wood structures, but when you're coming up onto a wood structure that has pieces that are like 15 feet long and they're about a foot in diameter, and they're ripped out of the ground, you can't tell me that that's people. There's no way. Like, and if it is a person, that's a really strong person. Like, it
Yeah.
took several people to make this thing, So a lot of my documentation revolves around wood structures mainly, and the reason for that again is because that's really all that I've got to go off of. And then finding the prints. Typically, when I find a print, the few that I have found have been around these wood structures. So again, that kind of ties it all in for me. That these wood structures are not just people putting this stuff together. It's alleged, or I think it's Sasquatch activity in my opinion.
Yes. And like that's the issue with trace evidence is that we weren't there when that stick structure was made. So you can't
Right.
particularly say it's Sasquatch, but
Right.
you can't particularly say it wasn't either.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's like the issue with trace evidence. But there's always how I see it, trace evidence, if enough of it stacks up, then that's an indicator for a species being present. And with like the evidence you're finding, there's plenty of evidence stacking up to indicate that there is a presence of a creature.
Right.
Now, with me, like with San Antonio, I think Bigfoot, I think your thinking might very along the line that they're not living in San Antonio. They might probably just moving through and maybe not present 100% of the time, but it's just a travel corridor for them.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. I think that they are nomadic. I think that they do travel, and I think they are, in my opinion, I think they're creatures of habit as well. I think they circle back around, to the same area, and the reason why I say that is because during the summer, our area, it's brutally hot. It's
Yeah,
terribly hot, right? So I've noticed something about the summers that we have here, and in going into the fall and winter, I've noticed that once we get into summer, a lot of that activity just kind of stops. There's really not much that I find in during the summer. There's really not a whole lot. Now, when I get into fall and winter, it kicks back up a little bit. And the reason why I say that is because I think that, these creatures probably, being that they've got a ton of hair, the heat is probably not their favorite. The summer's probably not their favorite season. So maybe they move out or move to a different area or somewhere else where it might be a little bit cooler, and then come back through during the fall and winter, and do their thing or hunt or whatever. So, you know, that's kind of and that's just what I think, just based off of some of the wood structures and some of the other trace evidence that I find. It seems to kind of take a nosedive in the summer, and then fall and winter, and then early spring. It's a little bit more active. So I don't know. I could be wrong. Are we are we glitching a little bit? I think there's a little delay.
because
Oh, there you go.
season my end. So it might just be that. But if there's a little bit of
Yeah,
lag, sorry
that's all good.
about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that happens.
And
No worries.
internet, am I right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But like what they call the seasonal Sasquatch, how they might migrate
yeah,
during the seasons, and like during the summers down here when it's super hot. Of course, an animal as large as them wouldn't be as active
no,
as like deer or something like that.
yeah, yep, yeah, and that makes sense. Again, like I mean, if I was like a 7, 8 foot creature with thick hair, I think the last place I would want to be is here during the summer. You know that. I mean, if I'm pissed off and aggravated about the heat here, and I have like no hair covering my body, I can only imagine what it's like for a creature like that. So I would think that maybe they move or migrate somewhere else and then circle back through. You know.
Yeah, and it's a probability. And one thing I want to ask you too, I know you do find a lot of trace evidence, but have you ever heard of people talking like if they've maybe seen something or heard something from San Antonio in the area, like any
Yeah,
possible eyewitnesses?
yeah, absolutely. There's a friend of mine I've known for years, and she used to live off of a tributary that's off of the Salado Creek. I don't know if you know where Bulverde Road is, out
Yeah.
there, 1604. And that, okay, so if you follow Salado Creek, there's a little tributary that runs outside and it goes in around that area, Bulverde Road, 1604. And she lived on the same piece of property that her parents live on currently. And there's two houses on this piece of property, and they're probably about the houses are about maybe 50 feet away from each other.
Mm.
They're older houses. They're on pier and beam, so they're probably from the ranch land that it was before, and they were able to purchase this property and live on it. um, she was talking about, this is a while back, and this is something that was interesting to me because she had no idea about Sasquatch or Bigfoot or any of those things. Well, she has two young boys, and at the time, when they got into this house, living on the parents' property, she didn't have curtains on the windows, and she really didn't have any reason to put any in because it wasn't in a neighborhood where there's a bunch of houses. It's its own piece of property, and then on that piece of property, that creek runs in and out of that piece of property, and it goes up to 1604. In fact, it goes past 1604. So there's your safe passage. And then she's got a lot of whitetail that were running through that area. So one of the things that she noticed was that when it was time to go to bed, she'd put her two boys to sleep in their room, and then a couple of hours later, they would start screaming and crying and running into her room, wanting to sleep in her room with her. And the reason for that was that they had said that there was a big, tall, uh, they said it was a big, tall, dark man that was staring in their window at them.
Mm.
And so she thought that they were just, being kids, and, they had, imaginations that were just running wild. And this happened several nights, and the kids would scream and cry and run into her room, and she thought, what the heck, what's wrong with you guys, like? And they're saying, it's this tall dark man, he's staring in our window at us, he stares at us every night. And so finally she put up curtains, and that seemed to kind of stop that whole thing. Well, when she did that, then she had a particular situation where she was cooking in the kitchen towards the evening hour, and she felt like something just ran into her house, like just hit her house. And so that whole thing happened, and for her, that was kind of a weird thing, the other part of it was that, she had a couple of times where there was a really bad smell around the area, and she had no idea, what that was about, and it came and it left, and so there's definitely you know some alleged activity. I think it might be. I'm not sure, but it's crazy to hear this story and not think that it couldn't be, Sasquatch activity at all. So, you know, it's one of those things, I guess. Oh, guess we lost you. There you are. Can you hear me? There you go. I can hear. I think I can hear you.
Hey, Rod, can you
Yep.
hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm here. I don't see your. I guess your camera's off.
Yeah, I myself this stream.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
You there?
Sorry
Oh, there.
about that.
There you go.
Uh, I did not realize my computer was unplugged this whole
Yep.
time. So I'm gonna go without the camera, so it's not as laggy. Because
Yeah.
with the battery being low, it's gonna be real laggy.
No problem. No problem.
It was unplugged this whole. Yeah. Let's see. I did this. The battery's pretty low right now.
Oh
It's all
no.
with difficult, technical difficulties. But you're good.
All good, man. The joys of technology.
Yeah. Like I looked and it just boom died. I'm like, what's going on? Oh my charger wasn't plugged in.
Yeah.
But it's still on battery saver, so I got maybe a couple minutes of remaining. So
No problem, man.
let's we can finish this off and we can
Sure.
just keep going.
Yeah, man. No worries. No worries. So, did you hear any of the? I think I was
Oh,
talking
we
about
were at Bow Verde,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, Bulverde Road.
Bigfoot looking in windows.
Yeah. So you've got kids that had identified somebody looking in their window that was pretty tall and big. They said he was dark, and so you gotta wonder, what exactly what it was. Was it a person? Do people just roll up on private property and just stare in windows, or is this one of those creatures, and to me, everything that she described and everything that she encountered and experienced, it was classic Sasquatch activity, in my opinion. Based off of plenty of encounters that I've read about and heard about. You know, window peeking, the smell, slapping the side of the house, things like that. That's all classic Sasquatch um, activity. So, you know, that's one story. First of this is all hearsay, of course, because I'm getting the secondhand information. But kids, you know kids like that are scared and going crazy and genuinely like scared. There's a reason for that, so you could only point towards what I think it might be, so but that's one. I think that's one, you know that's one encounter um, that I've heard, from somebody that I know. And to me, that all that stuff, everything she described, that's all classic Sasquatch activity. Like that's the window peeking, the smell, slapping the side of the house. That's all. That's a lot. That's all of it. I mean, that's. You think about any encounter or story that you've heard, uh, you know, with the, with them window peeking and things like that. That's classic activity. I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, there you
That's
go. There
exactly
you
what
are.
you expect from Cure. Gotcha. There you go. Minus
Yeah.
three to low battery limit. Yeah, that's classic Bigfoot behavior. The window peeking and the slapping of the house and being curious about who's living there.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. It is. That's one of the. I guess I believe she had a genuine well, at least her kids had a genuine encounter. You know, I feel like they did. What I don't think there's too many people that are gonna roll up on a piece of property like that just to window peek. That's a good way to get shot. That's a good way to get killed, especially here in Texas. That people just don't do that here. You know what I mean? So you got to chalk it up to possible Sasquatch activity or Sasquatch behavior. You know,
Mm,
can you hear me? Okay. Okay.
they could. What it? I can hear you. And would it? I do not want to cut this short, man, but
No, that's
with
okay.
the technical difficulty on my side, might have to cut this short. But before we leave, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So on Facebook, I have Bear County Bigfoot. If you want to look me up and become a part of the group, you can definitely do that. Uh, Facebook, Bear County Bigfoot. Instagram, Bear County Bigfoot as well. You can follow me there. The more the merrier. And then on YouTube, it's the same thing, Bear County Bigfoot, Bexar County Bigfoot. Please check me out, man, and give me a follow. Show us some love. So that's pretty much it. And if you've had an encounter or a sighting, in the area, please get a hold of me. I would love to
So
talk to you, and see where you're at, and come out and investigate if you're open for
with
that.
it, if you guys,
I'm sorry. Oh, there you are. Got you.
if you guys want to go, if you guys are out there, kind of Bigfoot's doing a lot of good work out there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course. So you always got your Instagram, your Facebook, your YouTube. I have that all linked below. So go check out those links and go support Bear County Bigfoot,
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much.
of course. And we'll be cutting this little short. So have a good night, everyone. Have a good night, Bear County Bigfoot, and it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you, man. Take care.
Later.
Take care, bud. All right. Thank you.